Glad to have you back. And if you're just joining us, well, once again, this is Nigeria Decides, and we are talking about the role of the next governor coming into play. Who defines the task? That's you and me now. We have in the studio joining us Jide Balogun, a legal practitioner. Apologies, I was going to say Balogun. Thank you very much for coming back, Jide Balogun. And we also have Daniel Odupe, a legal practitioner.
It's good to have you join us, gentlemen.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So, of course, we're looking at the task ahead of the governors generally, but we're going to use Lagos as a focus point. But let's start with the likes of Oyo State, where we see that somebody totally different is coming in, and the man who's on his way out has been a very interesting personality. What task do you think lies ahead of the new incoming Oyo State governor? And what are the peculiarities of that state?
You know, I think the task has been simplified by our constitution, which is the guiding document we have. And if you consult Chapter 2 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended, it stipulates basically that the welfare and the security of the citizens is the primary purpose of government. And primary means foundation. Without that established, every effort of governance will be vanity. Now, let's see how that connects with the most recent elections we had. It was the absence of security that kept some away from exercising their constitutional right, because under the same Chapter 2, the Constitution says sovereignty belongs to the people, from whom government will derive its power and authority. So if you are going to represent the people, allow them to express themselves. Like we have been, enlightened this evening here in the studio, that for some, the only time they participate in the process of democracy is when they come out to vote. So allow them to vote. And some of us are keenly concerned with the involvement of the military, which also holds the issue of security down. I know that under Section 218 of the Constitution, the Commander-in-Chief has the power to deploy the military. But why are we deploying the military? Is because security is lacking in the country, whether we give it political coloration or whatever. I know that the 1993 election, the one that was annulled, we did not have the involvement of military during the voting process. In fact, the security was so great in the country that people, in fact, what we had then, I doubt if we can have it now, which was the option A4. You queue behind your preferred candidate. Can we have that under this most recent 2019 election, where ballot documents were burnt and everything? So you must secure the people and lives and properties. You must provide for them. You must create an enabling environment. And these things are spelled out.
Okay.
You go further under that particular section, you talk about national integration. It's a constitutional assignment. People must be united. Section 15 says our motto is unity and faith. And so the longer we are divided, the less faith we have in the project Nigeria. So how do you garner the patriotism? And the closing part says peace and progress. And without peace in the land, where would the progress come? Daniel. And without the progress, where's the prosperity? So these are basic tasks for those who have the privilege of managing the affairs of this country, whether at the state level, local level, national level, in the next 4 years. And please, 4 years starts counting now, and 4 years we go. And experience has shown us that only about 2.5 years of the 4 years are channeled towards governance in Nigeria. The remaining part of the years are channeled to politicking. But if you perform so soundly with the governance aspect of the years, you won't have to struggle. I look forward to
I have loads of questions for you, but I'm just going to put a pin there. Let's go to Daniel. Daniel, looking at the situation and the political terrain in Nigeria, we see duplication of ministries, departments and agencies for political reasons. We keep hearing that government is a continuum, so whoever you are, whatever party you belong to, when you assume that responsibility of a governor, you're supposed to continue from where your predecessor stopped. But in Nigeria, the case is different. Why do you think so?
First and foremost, I should say that the governors and the people that were elected into offices, they seem to forget that they have 4 years. I mean, that seems to go away once they get into office. And so when they get into office, they rigmarole and do all kinds of things, and their high-handedness and all of that, and they forget that once the election cycle comes, the people, sovereignty belongs to the people. The people will say elect who they want, to govern them for the next 4 years. So going to your question about why or how that governance should be such that it's in continuum, that people pick up from where they stop. Unfortunately, in this part of the world, those who we elect or those who are available for us to elect are really not interested in the business of governance. You're not interested in service. If you're interested, it's all about interest. And I mean, I'm not saying that that's not the case all over the world. It's all about interest. But unfortunately, the interest that is being protected by our ruling class are the interest, it's not the interest of the common man. So the issue of ensuring continuity, ensuring that project that was started by previous administration is continued, and then progress is made. It's all about consolidation for them. It's all about building an empire, making sure that all those who sponsored them, and that's the biggest problem if you ask me. So if it's only in a situation where you have people who are interested in service, who are genuinely interested to better their lives, I sincerely think that most of the people most of the candidates, most of the people that are available for us to vote for are not genuinely interested in service. And so the issue of continue, because I remember somebody in government, an appointee in the last administration, well, they're still in power, said something. He said every politician knows what to do. They know what to do, but the question they always ask themselves is, if I do this, will I be re-elected? So it's not. Our problems are not so complex. They're not something that you need to go out of them. They are simple. Just make sure that as issue arises, you are providing solutions to them. You have the interest of the people at heart. But unfortunately, it's just that they do not have the interest of the populace.
Now, quickly, we have the likes of Nasser El-Rufai, who is coming once again as governor of a state. We have Ifeanyi Okowa as well, and much more. Now, what's level of implementation and how fast do you think these governors, do you expect them to work? Because at the end of the day, doing a comparison with those who are just coming in as freshers, yes, we believe in the government being a continuum, but now they are not starting as day one anymore. They are running at the level 400 this time around. So how then do we now put an assessment? We always do the first 100 days, the first 365 days, but now these individuals are counting over 1,000 days in office. What do you think should be the definitive
Given the Nigerian assessment, I think it's usually anti-clockwise.
And adding to what the president also said, he said, well, the system is slow, that's why it's moving slow. So do you anticipate that the governors will still give excuses for not delivering on whatever we are expecting them to?
I just mentioned now, within the Nigerian context, it's usually anti-clockwise. That means they go out to impress in the first term and just relax in the second term, because I'm not coming for third term, which is also a problem.
But that means that they're not people-oriented. It means they're not Democrats, because whether you've been given a second term or not, or whether you think that this is the way other people do it, if the people had a say, if these leaders were responsive to the people, we wouldn't have people relaxing in their second tenure, because you're put there to do a job, and the job you must do.
Brilliant. And that is why we are where we are now. That is not the case with Nigeria. When people confront me with the issue of timing, I refer them to Tanzania, where John Magufuli, within a short period of time, did a massive transformation of the institutions. You are the president, commander-in-chief. So if you choose to go slowly, it's your choice. Chief Lateef Jakonde managed Lagos for how long? And he impacted the people that till today, he's still a relevant factor. You see, for how long did Nelson Mandela manage South Africa before he left? When the man was dying, people were praying that he should not die. And he said, release me to go. So it's and that's why I'm giving an advice. I look forward to a situation in Nigeria where democracy is truly practiced, and you begin to sit down to say, okay, all the roads in my constituencies have been tarred by this party. I'm not ready to attend to any opposition. We have the incidence of strong opposition because of failure of governance. If you have impacted me positively, you have connected with me emotionally, I'll be loyal to you. In the business environment, you do your brand propositions, you make your offerings out there. It's a competitive environment. You go out there, you cannot manipulate. There are several banks. I compare services. I come to your banking hall, you keep me there for 1 hour because I want to withdraw $500,000. I get to another bank, oh, they welcome me specially, and in 5 minutes I'm out. I mean, I have control over my resources. I may choose to even shut down my account with your bank. So until we begin to see democracy as business and not what should benefit a few, I'm challenging Nigerians to please Google on their phone. Thank God for technology. Go and study chapter 2 of our constitution. Do you know that it is a constitutional obligation for the government to make me happy as a citizen? It's in the constitution.
It's your right.
Yes, to make me happy, to make me prosper, to ensure that wealth is not concentrated in the hands of few. They are there. So like he brilliantly mentioned, they know what to do. But why don't they want to do it? So that they can have control. Because politics has two definitions.
Talking about control, let me quickly button there. Now, we know the realities when it comes to play. We look at the outgoing governor, for example, of Lagos State now. Some would say that it's because he wasn't necessarily following the blueprint, and that's why he's fallen out of favor. So now, who then defines the plan of action, the level of growth that we should anticipate, and what actually happens at the different state levels? Because at the end of the day, some people will go in, but the powers that be that orchestrated your coming in and giving you a platform or a voice are the ones who still determine how things really roll.
It's a mixed issue. For instance, good leaders raise more leaders, not necessarily followers. So if those who are influential in the system want people to develop, like the likes of Chief Olufemi Awolowo, who brought free education, by virtue of which many got educated, enlightened, to contribute to the sustainable development. I'm asking a question. If Nigeria continues with this level of hoodlumism,
God for that reason,
and thuggery in the next 50 years, we may end up like Mali. Mali was one of the richest regions in the world, talking about precious metal, gold and everything. Today, Mali is a struggling. Do you know that at a time India overtook China as a super economic power? And recently we just took over from India in the ranking of poverty. So you need to empower the people. I was doing a study on Sheikh Zayed of UAE, who transformed UAE from a desert to a paradise that we have today. And the man said, wealth is not money. Wealth is developing the people. That is why you go to that region, they are educated, they are living well, they have connected with the future. The man died. He was to be 100 years last year. He was celebrated so much. He has contributed his own. A great leader. And that's why some of us are concerned about what is going on. And let me also warn those who think they have all the resources to manipulate the environment. It backfires. If you don't enlighten a mind, the mind has the tendency of coming back to base. And when they return to base, they can be very destructive.
Quickly, just Daniel, there is also the issue of, he's talking about empowering. If people know that if you educate, if you empower the people, Nigeria has the highest number of out-of-school children as we stand. In fact, 2018 was a year where we made all the wrong lists in the world. Looking at education, awareness, poverty eradication, empowerment of the young persons with skills acquisition, and all sorts of things. I mean, ICT is the new age thing that everybody is playing with. Let's go back to a country like Rwanda. I always like to use them as an example. Rwanda had genocide, but right now they are rising pretty fast, and they've overtaken us, and we're supposed to be the big brother of this continent. How do we leverage on education, raising the standards of our education, giving more people an opportunity to maybe not necessarily be doctors, nurses, and lawyers, but getting other skills that could better their lives instead of using them to be ballot box snatchers or, you know, like he said, hoodlumism.
In all fairness to the government, these things that you mentioned, they are not the exclusive responsibility of the government. No, we all have a role to play. Today, you are a graduate, I'm a graduate. You know, what are we doing in our own little way to ensure that we empower people? So we need to break it down to understand that, look, we are in this together. Unless maybe you have a visa to Canada and you're relocating very soon, or any of that.
But there are people who have interest in doing all kinds of businesses. They have ideas, but the enabling environment is a challenge. In other words, somebody has a barbing salon, and the little money he has is paying to buy. He's buying fuel to fit the generator, and the generator runs so long that it has to break down and he has to service it, you know, and then he has to deal with, you know, the people who come to tax him, and sometimes the same thing, for the same thing, the 5 different people will come. Government needs to create that enabling environment. In fact, some people say if you power this country, every other thing will fall in place.
True, no doubt. The biggest or the most important responsibility of governance is creating an enabling environment. It's been said that it is not necessarily the responsibility of government to create jobs. You know, they should play their part, but it is not their primary responsibility. Their responsibility is to create enabling environment. You know that is correct. However, I mean, it's a matter of somebody enjoying some benefits, and you know the person, you know, I mean the political class. I mean, we need to understand that there are certain people who are benefiting from the current state of affairs in Nigeria as it is, and it's not going to be easy for I mean, if we want to change, if we want true change, if we clamor for true change, we need to truly demand for it. We need to be proactive as a people. I insist honestly that we as a people, we are not doing enough. So if we say that, you know, the government is not creating an enabling environment, I mean, ordinarily they ought to do it willingly, but we need to be more proactive as a people. We need to cooperate together. And average Nigeria is more interested, you know, in just I'm okay, I'm fine. For example, let's look at the power sector that you talked about. You know, today it's been privatized. Okay, so it's not, you know, even though government still has, you know, a lion's share of some of the distribution companies and what have you. However, it is now in the hand of private hands. What are they doing? What are we doing as customers? What are we doing? How are we approaching them? I mean, I still think that there's a lot that we can do to put them on their toes. I mean, look at this 2019 election. I, for one, I do not really think that true change will come through the election system. I'm sorry. I believe that regardless of who is in power, the people need to cooperate together and demand quality governance. Put government, I mean those in power on their toes. Your representative, your local government chairman, everybody. You need to put them on their toes. So I think that we as a people, we need to take a large chunk of the blame.
Taking up a stronger stance on our level of engagement. Now let's look at the Sustainable Development Goals as well as budget implementation this time around. Now, to what extent do you think at different states level that the populace would be able to mount pressure on the different state governors to ensure that we have these dividends reach us? If they are saying, well, the blueprints are defined by certain powers that be, why not the people use their understanding of the SDGs as the power and the blueprint that should be pressing on necessities this time around? And then we'll quickly go for a package that we have, but weighing on that before we get the voice of the people.
You know, it's quite interesting, but I will not join the camp of those making excuses for the government. I will just ask this simple question. If in Nigeria today a law bans the use of generators in Aso Villa and all state houses across the state, will we fix the power problem in Nigeria? How have we succeeded in giving Niger Republic and Benin Republic consistent power supply? How do we find it easy to jet out of this country to deposit our children in schools abroad, and some are subjected to hoodlumism in this country? I believe this country can work when we have conscientious leaders. We are over-resourced in terms of how God has blessed us. And if only we allow justice, and I will quickly put justice in 4 capsules. We have commutative justice. exemplified by saying 2 times 3 is 6, 3 times 2 is 6. And that talks about equality. We should see all the regions of this country of deserving development. You have distributive justice, which is that what God has given us, we should enjoy. You have legal justice, which is the business of the government to implement the laws and sanitize society. And we have social justice that gives you and I a say in what happens in this country. If you look at Switzerland, for instance, they have the plebiscites and the referendum. From time to time, they actively participate in issues concerning the country. And that is where you have about the highest level of participatory democracy in the world. Do you even know that in some countries of this world it's mandatory for you to vote? So the government has a lot to do. If we are saying the government has no role to play, then why do we need to put that structure in place? Then why don't we just allow everybody to operate? So we must challenge. I mean, and I take us back to Singapore. And do you know that recently Singapore had excess budget by year 2017 and they had to give money back to citizens? Things can work. And the Lee Kuan Yew, the leader of Singapore, told Chief Olusegun Obasanjo on consultation. The man asked him, how did you transform Singapore from a third world country to a first world country? He said, we decided to do the right thing, and we have continued to do the right thing. So I emphasize that we know the right thing to do as a country. I'm proud of this country. This country will fly high. Let's start doing the right thing. Let's drop our greed, our selfishness, our whatever it is that is blocking our way, and let the prosperity of this country manifest, and we shall all rejoice in it.
Well, we have to go. Unfortunately, we do not have enough time to keep talking about this, but this is a very interesting conversation, and of course our leaders need to understand the needs of the people and of course operate from that level. We want to say thank you very much, Daniel Odupe and Jide Ologun, who are all legal practitioners. Thank you, gentlemen, for speaking with us.
God bless Nigeria.
It's still Nigeria Decides on Plus TV Africa. We'll take a break, and when we come back, the conversation is still robust and it continues.